come this morning to preach an absolute message. An absolute message. This is not an optional message. It's not a suggestive message, but it's an absolute message. And we live in a world where there are few absolutes.
Amen.
As a matter of fact, I think there may be no absolutes in the world that we live in. This world's thinking, and I understand it because outside of God, everything is changing. It's evolving. That which I learned in school 40, 50 years ago, 55 years ago, not exactly what a child learns today. It's evolved. Things are changing. But this morning, if what we are, if what we experience here, if what we know here is not absolute, then we're in trouble. And most deceived. You know, it's very difficult for us to admit that we're wrong. Wrong about what we believe. It's a devastating thing to believe that or to know that. I mean, to find out somewhere down the road that what we believe was wrong. For example, when the Berlin Wall came down, communism failed, it was an amazing thing that happened. People were given access to the files that the secret police had kept on them. And for many people, it was a very uncomfortable time. It was an uncomfortable reading of what was written. People they had trusted had betrayed them. Family members, husbands, wives, children. They thought they knew these people. They were wrong. And it left them wondering, what do we know for certain? See, truth is, there's not very much we know for certain. Not very much.
Amen.
The Bible describes in our text this morning the man, Job, a servant of God. He was a man that possessed spiritual uniqueness. He was unmatched in both riches and righteousness. Job was blessed greatly by God. He had no need of a job. Job was God's blessing. And God was the one that blessed Job. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters. Job had 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels. Job had 500 yoke of oxen and 500 donkeys. His home was a lavished home. There was beauty and bounty everywhere. He had servants going and servants coming. Job was a biblical tycoon. He was called the greatest man in the East. But in all of his wealth, in all of his material wealth, Job was a spiritual marvel. He was rich, but Job was righteous. He had plenty, but Job was a man of prayer. He had earthly workers, but Job maintained a heavenly worship. He had land, but he knew that it was leased from somebody else. So in our text this morning, we see a man, and you know his story. He has amassed much wealth. But all of a sudden, one moment of time, in one day, he was reduced to nothing. He was reduced from being a very fruitful man all the way down to being a frail man. So quickly that can happen to us. Amen. At the peak of his life, God allowed Satan himself to strip him of his wealth. In one moment, he was broke. If he had a bank account, it was empty. His employees died. His children were gone. I mean, one day he has 10 children, the next day he's looking at 10 caskets. We can only imagine. He went from riches beyond our comprehension to ruin beyond our comprehension. He went from being affluent to from being somebody to being nobody. He went from being able to being unable. His riches turned to rags. He went from a stand-up man to a man who was told to just hush. Suddenly, Job's great triumph of life was turned into tragedy. In an instant, sickness plagued his body. He nor his 3 friends could explain what was going on. How quickly a limousine can turn into a hearse. How quickly everything can change in our lives. One of the things that me and my wife have discussed over the last few years is how quickly things change with our bodies. Just not the same as we used to be. Can't do what we used to do. Can't go like we used to go. And it happened so quickly. Well, it all happened to Job. And it happened so quickly. He was somebody. Poor Job is nobody. But his faith in a living Redeemer is still there. Job lost fame, family, fortune. If you think about it, his future was lost. It had all the appearance of a great retirement. Had all the appearance of passing great wealth to his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. And now there's nothing to give. His wife lost her mind. But Job kept his faith in his Redeemer. He is a picture to us this morning of faith in the storm. He is an example to us of what to be and what we can be in the greatest of calamities. He was a trophy of human fidelity. Divine permission granted and satanic intervention left him in a trying place. His loss was sudden. It was sobering. It was a shock to Job. It was a shock to Job's friends. It was a shock to everybody. Sickness is like that, isn't it? Can come in a moment. You could have gotten up this morning and had a stroke before you left the bedroom. Never to walk again, never to speak again. It could have happened. You could have lost everything this week. Your job. You could have lost all security that you think you have. You could have lost it all. Job teaches us something. He couldn't hold on to it. He couldn't hold on to his wealth. He couldn't hold on to his family. He couldn't hold on to his health. He couldn't protect his family. He couldn't depend on his wife. And he certainly couldn't count on his friends. He came to a place that there was very little old Job could even know for sure. But listen to what he said. Job 19:9. He has stripped me of my glory and taken the crown from my head. He has destroyed me on every side, and I'm gone. And mine hope hath he removed like a tree. He hath also kindled his wrath against me. He's counted me unto him as one of his enemies. His troops come together and raise up their way against me, and encamped around my tabernacle. He hath put my brethren far from me, and my acquaintance are very strange from me. My kinfolk have failed, and my familiar friends have forgotten me. So quickly that can happen. They that dwell in my house and my maids count me for a stranger. I'm an alien in their sight. I called my servant, he gave me no answer. I entreated him with my mouth. My breath is strange to my wife, though I entreated for the children's sake of mine own body. Yea, young children despised me. I arose and they spake against me. All my inward friends abhorred me, and they whom I loved are turned against me. My bone cleaveth to my skin and to my flesh, and I'm escaped with the skin of my teeth. Job thought he was going to die. Job thought it was going to die now. Job thought that this thing was over. And so quickly it can be over. I heard one man say, you don't have as long to live as you think you do. You don't have as much going for you as you think you do. You don't have as much to trust as you think you have to trust. All Job knew was gone. All he had was gone. But he knew somebody. I stood here last week and I preached, do you love God? If I'd have been doing the planting, I'd have preached that this week and preached this last week, but I didn't plant it. I come to ask you another question this morning. That is, do you know God? Do you know the Redeemer? I've talked to a lot of folks that thought they knew things. I've talked to people that thought they knew their husband and they thought they knew their wife. To find out they didn't. One of the things that I'm most shocked about is when there's some type of killing or some type of crime committed and someone's been arrested, and to hear their family say, that's just not like you. I just don't believe that he did that. I know him. But yet, they're witnesses. There's evidence. There's evidence, unquestionable evidence, that the person did what they're charged with. But people that lived with them, people that were their neighbors, people that were their friends, they said, I thought I knew him. I never dreamed he would do that. I've heard men and women say, I thought I could trust my husband or my wife. I thought I knew them. I know my child. But do we really? I contend this morning we know far less than what we think we know. But the truth this morning that I want to bring home to you is there is something we can know. Without question, without a shadow of a doubt, you can know this great God. You know the effort of hell has been from the very beginning in the Garden of Eden was to discredit that there was a God. That there was a Holy One, a Creator. And down through history, down through the annals of time, men have done everything they know to discredit and to do away with God. They don't want God. They don't want a God. They want to be God. They want to be the one that's in charge of their own destiny. They don't want any interference. They don't want anybody standing over. They don't want nobody in charge. They don't want anybody that stands in judgment. They want nothing to do with it. Right. But we have come. We've come in the kingdom to know that there is God. I'm not talking this morning about belief. We must move beyond belief. One of the problems with belief is it's ever changing. We must come to a place that we know. And you this morning under the sound of my voice can know this great, great God. Amen. Not just know about, not just have some passing thoughts. You know, a great majority of those that are part of the church, they don't even acknowledge God most of the time. They don't think of God. They don't entertain in their mind the very presence or the very knowledge of God. They're consumed with self and everything that goes with it. But we can know Him. Paul came across a bunch of folks in the New Testament. They were worshiping people. Lord, I'm telling you, they worshiped. They worshiped. They had a God. They had a God. They had so many gods. They worshiped and they worshiped and they worshiped and they even had an idol to an unknown God. Oh, Paul came unto Mars Hill there. He observed all that he saw. He observed all the gods. He observed all the worship. And he came across the idol of the unknown God. And he said, oh, this is what I want to talk to you about. You worship that you don't know. You don't know who you worship. You don't know what you worship. But I've come to tell you there's somebody, this unknown God that you don't know, that's the real God, and you can know Him.
Yes. Amen.
You can talk to Him. He'll talk to you. You can have fellowship with Him. He'll fellowship with you. You can love Him. He can love you.
Amen.
I do that. I don't know. Our vice president of this country says he's a Christian. I take him at his word. He said he knows Jesus. He said he talks to him. Jesus talks to him. This world said he's crazy. This world said he's off his rocker. I don't know what all they said about him, but it wasn't good. But I can tell you this morning, I'm not the vice president, don't have a world platform, but I can tell you this, I know him, I've met him. I can promise you 38 years ago, I came in contact with him. Before then, I'd heard about him. Before then, I knew people that said they knew him. I find that they didn't know him, but there were some that did, and I met him, and I've got to know him, and our relationship is greater today than it was in the beginning. It's ever evolving, it's ever wonderful, it's ever blossoming, and it's coming to a culmination one day, and I'm going to spend eternity with him.
Amen. Amen.
It just gets sweeter, and it gets sweeter, and it gets sweeter as the day goes by. You can know him for surety. If you look at the little book, 1 John, 27 times in that book, John uses the word know. K-N-O-W. 27 times. I've got every one of them in my notes. I didn't come to read every scripture to you. I think there's 24 different scriptures, but 27 times that he uses the word know. Hereby we do know that we know him if we keep his commandments. That's what John said. I know him, he said. But he that saith I know him and keep not his commandments is a liar. And the truth's not in him. But whoso keepeth his word, to him verily is the love of God perfected. Hereby know we that are in him. Ye have an unction from the Holy One, and ye know all things. I've not written unto you because you know not the truth, but because you know it, and that no lie is of the truth. We know that we passed from death unto life because we love the brethren. He that loveth not his brother abideth in death. And hereby we know that we are of the truth, and shall assure our hearts before him. And he that keepeth his commandment dwelleth in him, and he in him, and hereby we know that he abideth in us by the Spirit which he hath given us. Hereby know we that we dwell in him, and he in us, because he hath given us of his Spirit. We know, you're hearing me this morning, we know that whosoever is born of God sinneth not, but he that's begotten of God keepeth himself, and that wicked one toucheth him not. Job's trial, losing everything. He also found his friends, rather than comfort him, they accused him. They said, "Sin's in your life, Job." And old Job, he sets out trying to defend himself like us all. I pray one day that I'm going to mature to a place that I don't try to defend myself. I just pray. One of these days I'm going to reach a maturity in God that I will be like the Lord. They just accuse me, and I just say, "Thou sayest." That's all. Nothing else. I just know that's right. But Job, he defended himself. Debate after debate. Dilemma after dilemma. And they pinned him down. They pinned old Job down to a place. There wasn't nothing else for him to say. His wife gave up on him. Said, "Job, just curse God and die." There was nobody with him. There was nobody at his defense. Are you hearing me this morning? He's lost it all and everything's against him. Nobody's for him. His friends wagged their heads. They felt sorry for him. But they believed it was his fault. That don't help, does it? It's one thing for a man to feel sorry for you. And it's another thing for him to feel sorry for you and say you brought it all on yourself. Every bit of it on yourself. But then all of a sudden at the end of the road, all of a sudden when there's nothing else to say, all of a sudden when there was nowhere to turn, and something wailed up in old Job. And just before he spoke, he said, "I don't want this to be just words that vanish away. What I'm going to say, I want it preserved." He said, "Oh, that my words were now written. Oh, that they were printed in a book." Then he changed it. He said that they were graven with an iron pen and lead in the rock forever. He wanted them in a book. Well, they're in the book this morning. But he wanted them put on a rock, probably a tombstone. Something that was permanent, something that would be there, that would last forever. He had a revelation of all revelations. And that revelation is available to you and me this morning. That revelation can be ours. It can be ours personally this morning. He said, "I," not you, not we, not a few, not a majority, but he said, "I," a personal pronoun. And he said, "Not I think or I wish or I believe." But he said, "With all confidence." He said, "With all the authority that a man can have. Not hoping so, not wondering so." He moved on to the word "my." It's not grandma's Redeemer. No. It's not your Redeemer. It's his personal Redeemer. See, when we stand before God, we're not going to stand before him as a group. They're not going to say, "Pastor Chamblee, come and bring the flock from Victory Church." That's not what's going to happen. They're not going to say, "Chamblee, get your wife and your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, your mama and daddy and grandma and grandpa, y'all all come now." No. I'm not going to say, "But Chamblee, get your staff. Get those that have been with you, those that have helped you, those that have held up your arms, those that have been leaders. You come, y'all come. Get all your men together. Get all the men, get all of your men together. Bring them." No. That's not the way it's going to be. Just going to be us. Me. I. That's how it's going to be. Job said, I know my Redeemer lives. Not going to live. No. He said he lives now. The angel in the book of the Revelation said, who was the first, the last? He that was dead is alive, and is alive forevermore. Job didn't just stop there. He didn't just stop there. He had this revelation. He knew that his Redeemer lived. But he didn't stop there. No, sir. He said, I'm going to see him with my own eyes. I haven't seen him yet, Brother Calvin, but I'm going to see him. I said, I'm going to see him with my eyes. Job said, it doesn't matter if the skin worm's going to eat this flesh. He said, it doesn't matter that this body going to return to dust. No, I know he lives, and because he lives, I don't know when, but one of these days I'm going to get up myself, and with my eyes, I'm going to see him. I'll see him. See him. See him as he is. Those that know him are going to see him. Hear me? Those that know him are going to behold him with their eyes. Going to get up. Not near as far away as you think. Can you imagine what it was like for the church at Smyrna? They watched their pastor, an old man, be burned at the stake. Polycarp was his name. He was a disciple of the Lord Jesus Christ. And he was a disciple of the Apostle John. They say you would have known that because he possessed the same tenderness and compassion of his mentor John. He was the bishop of Smyrna, the church at Smyrna, modern day Turkey. Persecution broke out at Smyrna. Many of the Christians were fed to wild beasts in a great arena. The godless and the bloodthirsty cried out for their leader, Polycarp. The authorities sent a search party for him. He'd been taken into hiding by some Christians. But the soldiers tortured two men, two believers, until finally let it be known where they were. When the time came when they went to him, they whisked him away. Some said, fight, resist. Polycarp said, God's will be done. Polycarp welcomed his captors as friends. It's an amazing story. He talked with them. He insisted that they eat a meal with him. But he made one request from them before they took him away. They said, could you give me 1 hour to pray? Well, the soldiers, the Romans, they listened to him pray. And their hearts were melted, so they gave him 2 hours to pray. They were overheard asking, should we actually arrest him? Their hearts were warmed. They wanted to release him. They said, curse God, we'll let you go. He said, for 86 years I've served him. He never done me wrong. He said, how can I blaspheme the king that saved me? They're still looking for a way out. They said to him, just swear by the name of the emperor. That's all you have to do. He said, I'm a Christian. I can't do it. They threatened him with wild beasts, like so many have been thrown to the slaughter. Polycarp said, bring them forth. He said, I'd change my mind if it meant from going from worst to best, but not to change from right to wrong. They threatened him. They said, we're going to burn you alive. He said, you threaten with fire that burns for an hour. It's over. He said, the judgment of the ungodly is forever. The fire engulfed him. The witnesses, they saw joy and faith as they burned him. They finished him off with a dagger. He was buried February 22nd, 155 AD. It was a tragedy, but it was a day of victory. You know what it demonstrated? It demonstrated that he knew him. I said it demonstrated that he knew him. I ask us this morning, do we know him? I watched over the years as men walked out on God. Somebody offended them. I watched over the years as people walked out on God because they got their feelings hurt. I watched men walk out on God because God didn't bless them the way they thought God ought to bless them. I watched them. They closed their wallets, said, I won't give a dime. Because he didn't give me what I wanted. I watched them. They didn't know him. I said they didn't know him. I watched them because a loved one went to an early grave after they prayed. I watched them walk out on God. I watched them walk out on God because a loved one became deathly sick. And they didn't deserve to be sick. They never got well. So they walked out. They didn't know him. I said they didn't know him. They knew about him. Probably knew some folks that knew him. But they didn't know him. I've come this morning to tell you. I believe God sent me to tell you. You know him. You can know him. You can know him. That no matter what happens, that no matter what comes, no matter what goes, no matter if your husband walks out on you, or your wife walks out on you, or your kids forsake you, sickness encompasses your life and your family. You know him. Bankruptcy After all, Jesus said, what would it profit a man if he gained the whole world, lost his soul? What would it profit a man if he had everything? What would it profit a man if he had all this world's wealth, all this world's fame, all this world's possessions? What if you had the biggest and the greatest family of any people on the earth? What if you had it all, sir? Lost your soul. What would it profit you? I'm glad I know it this morning. I'm glad I know it. Because I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what tomorrow holds at the Chamblee's house. Whatever you hear, you just remember, he knew it. He knows it. You can't do it. Would you bow your head with me, Father? Thank you. Thank you for the revelation that we can know it. We can know you. We can know our Redeemer. The one that died for us. One that rose from the dead. God, thank you. Thank you. I pray, oh God, you'd help us this morning. You'd help us. Last night, I don't know, maybe 10 o'clock or so, I had the opportunity to listen to a sermon. Calvin sent it to me yesterday. I didn't have time all day. Last night late, my wife had gone to shower. I was by myself, so I turned it on. It's amazing what I heard the man preach. He didn't preach what I preached this morning. He actually preached concerning building. Brought out some very interesting things about running the course. Brought it up in terms of bricklaying. I was a little familiar with what he talked about. But as he come to the close of his message, he came to the close of his message somewhere where I preached this morning. This had long been all put away. When I heard it, I sent Brother Galvin a text. I said, I approve of this message. I said, I'm really surprised what he had to say is what I'm prepared to preach tomorrow. One of the things the man said when he came to the close, because he closed the way I preached today, about knowing God. I said, I preached the whole message that way. He just preached the last portion. He said, I don't know how I can give an altar call this morning. Because if I give an altar call to say, if you don't know him, he said, nobody's going to come. If you don't know him. He said, nobody's going to admit to that. And he said this. He said, Paul exhorted us all through the New Testament and said for us to examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith. I'm going to take his line this morning. And I'm going to ask us to examine ourselves, see how it is with us. You see, this message this morning, and this is something he said, not something to make you feel better or like. You know, I've often said, you know, sometimes we try to make message like a steak, something we savor. But it's never intended to be that way. But it's an opportunity for God, by the Spirit, to examine our hearts, to search deep within the inside of us, see how we are. I'm going to ask you this morning, if you just stand with me all across the building. I'm going to ask you to ask God to search your heart. I'm going to ask you to examine yourself. See where you are. See where you are. If this altar is appropriate this morning for you, I invite you to come. I invite you to come and bow your knee here. Pour yourself out to it. I invite you to come. Do you know him? Oh, do you know him? I just invite you. Oh, God, help us today.